Arctic Star Exploration, operated by a team of proven mine finders, is focused on diamonds in Finland and the Northwest Territories of Canada. Work programs are underway in Finland and Canada. Arctic Star trades on the TSX Venture Exchange symbol ADD, on Frankfurt symbol 82A1, and the OTCQB symbol ASDZF. Please visit our website arcticstar.ca or call us at 604-689-1799.
You're listening to HowStreet.com radio, available online at TalkDigitalNetwork.com. Welcome to HowStreet.com radio, the online source for market opinions. Here is Jim Goddard.
My guest is Ted Dixon, CEO and co-founder of InkResearch.ca. He invented the Inc. Canadian Insider Index, which is used by the Horizons Canada Insider Index ETF, a 2017 Fund Data Fund Grade A Plus Award winner. His website, CanadianInsider.com. Welcome back to the show, Ted.
Well, it's a pleasure to be back, Jim.
Your report today says something about deficits and discoveries are boosting gold. What's the story there?
Well, we've had a very close eye on the gold market all month because the gold price kind of surprised a lot of people this month when it didn't go down when interest rates rose. We had a big jump in interest rates. U.S. long bond rates broke through key resistance levels, 3%, and now toying with 3.20%. So the conventional wisdom, Jim, was going to be that this was going to be bad for the gold market. That gold, of course, doesn't pay a dividend, as I'm sure many of your listeners are reminded all the time from, analysts who tend to be bearish on gold. But there's something else going on, we think, here that is supporting the gold price, and probably more than one factor. And one of those factors is likely the U.S. Budget deficit that continues to grow. We'll soon hit $1 trillion, if not this decade, early next decade per year. It's really kind of moving in the wrong direction given the aging population in the U.S., where they're going to have a lot of bills coming due to service their Social Security needs. And in fact, Jim, you have to go all the way back to the 1950s, like after World War II, like early 1950s, late 1940s, where you've seen the amount of debt that is being held by the public here to finance U.S. spending. So I think there's certainly no panic. The U.S. has had these kind of budget deficits before. This is not new, but the circumstances are a little different now. We don't have a peace dividend to look forward to. Instead, we have a demographic ticking time bomb, for example, and we don't really see a pathway to reducing the federal deficit. So I think that's giving gold a bit of a boost. It's not the only factor. One of the other factors, which we don't get into in our Gold Top 20 report, but which we've talked about in our market reports from time to time over the past few months and in the Top 20 reports in the past, is the inflation rate. The more specifically, Jim, inflation expectations, because that really reflects fear of the future. And people are afraid that inflation is going to get ahead of the game. That will help the gold price as well. And we've seen an uptrend in inflation expectations over the past few years as measured by the University of Michigan sentiment survey. We're going to get another read on that, I believe, late next week. But the trend right there is gold friendly. So that's a positive. Now, there are headwinds against gold as well, and real rates are rising. What are real rates? Well, that's the difference between the quoted rate you'll see in the paper on your screen when you're looking at a bond yield and the inflation rate or the projected inflation rate over the time period. Those have been creeping up, which tends to compete with gold and makes gold less attractive. But the question always then you have to ask yourself is, why is the real rate going up? If it's going up because opportunities are great, you have a big boom going on, well, that's going to be gold negative. People aren't going to need gold. They're going to be chasing economic opportunity. But if it's going up because of risk, such as fear of the federal U.S. deficit getting too far out of control, then that's not necessarily gold negative. So we've seen a nice move in the gold market, and that is helping to generate some investor interest. But the other D that we're looking at are the discoveries, which, you know, you cover very well every week with John Kaiser on his Discovery Watch program, which I listen to every week. And, you know, he's been on top of a couple of big discoveries, and some of those stocks have appeared in our top 20 list over the past month or so. So what this is doing, it's providing some excitement amongst the investment community and the retail community and speculators, because they can actually see some results. You know, we've kind of been in a bit of a lull here for a number of years, waiting for some big discoveries. And while we haven't had a huge, massive find, you know, Voisey's Bay type find that, you know, that we saw in the base metals a long time ago now. But you know, we're starting to see some interesting activity. We talked about the Beta Hunt mine in Australia with visible gold, and that certainly caught a lot of people's attention. And as John Kaiser has been following on Discovery Watch, we've got a nice play in the Red Lake area in Ontario through Great Bear Resources. It's a stock, by the way, which somebody in our household owns. But you can keep up to date with, you know, with what John is talking about on these discoveries by Discovery Watch, and you can get that on our Canadian Insider website as well as HouseStreet.com. And Jim, if anybody signs up for a free account on CanadianInsider.com, we'll even send them an email when that show comes on, because what is really important here is not just sort of the fundamental reasons or the rationale behind why gold will do well, but also, are we going to get the excitement amongst investors and retail investors in the gold space? I think you need to have both. We have early signs that may be happening, and maybe we'll see the baton move from the marijuana stocks over to the gold stocks here in terms of what's getting the attention of speculators. Time will tell. You know, gold has behaved very well the last few weeks, but it's got to keep its head above water here. It's got to hold the $1,200 level, and we've got to continue to see investors hanging on to their gold stocks, even when, you know, some of the drilling news dries up, or getting into the, you know, as we go through into the late fall, early winter. Sometimes these news flows tend to be rather sparse, and investors often lose interest in gold shares. So we'll have to see if people hang on to their shares this time in anticipation of a higher gold price and firmer fundamentals in 2019. So, you know, it's a great start to the gold market here in October. It's still very early innings, and, you know, there's still plenty of room for disappointment, you know, and certainly those who've been investing in the gold area in the last decade or so are well used to disappointments. And sure, we could see that again, but so far so good.
Yeah, are we going to expect to find any more golden boulders laying around, like they did in Australia?
Time will tell, and that's all part of, I think, the intrigue with the Beta Hunt situation is whether there will be more, and certainly if they do find more gold, if it meets people's expectations, that will maintain interest in the sector. It may not necessarily maintain interest in that one stock, but if the story continues to unfold positively, it may help the whole entire group, because it is a visible discovery. It is something that people can actually visualize, see, and understand quite quickly, as opposed to, some discoveries, a low grade open pit, you have to really kind of get out your geologist guide to understand what's going on and whether it's an economically viable deposit, and it becomes quite complicated. But in terms of what we got at Beta Hunt, it's relatively straightforward what's going on there.
We'll have more with Ted Dixon right after this.
I'm Greg Johnston, CEO of Carl Data Solutions, an industrial Internet of Things company that provides big data solutions for monitoring critical infrastructure. Carl Data offers machine learning and predictive analytics features through our cloud-based applications to deliver key asset-saving operational insights from massive amounts of data. Carl Data trades on the CSE symbol CRL and the pink symbol CDTAF. For more details on Carl Data, please visit carlsolutions.com.
Vatic Ventures Corp. is a potash exploration company focused on the Korat Basin in Thailand, the world's largest undeveloped potash resource. Vatic's management has extensive potash exploration and development experience in Thailand. Vatic will have marketing advantage compared to Western producers. Drill program commences this spring. Vatic trades on the TSX Venture, symbol VCV, and on Frankfurt, symbol V8V2. Visit our website, vaticventures.com.
Welcome back. We're speaking with Ted Dixon. Ted, on Wednesday, recreational pot became legal in Canada, but we already saw a number of drawbacks. The stores that were open across the nation quickly ran out of product. BC only had one store in a small city, and it ran out. Was this poorly laid out, and are marijuana stocks bound to go up because there might be shortages?
Well, I just wish the federal government had move with the same kind of haste it has on marijuana rollout, as they could have done on the Trans Mountain Pipeline, and we'd have our pipeline built, and we could all be celebrating something. But instead, no, we do have the marijuana rollout, and this, I think, experience just shows that this is an evolving environment for companies to operate in. A lot of uncertainty. And the question for investors is whether they should be paying really high multiples, not necessarily across the board, for companies operating in such an environment. Now, the bullish case will be, well, look, there's shortages, there's obviously lots of demand, but the other side of the coin is, well, why are there shortages, and what does that mean for the profitability of these companies? Are companies being stuck with the inventory they can't use because the regulatory system isn't quite up to snuff? If that's the case, that wouldn't be great news for investors. If companies can't get a product to market, Jim, that sounds a lot like the oil patch in Canada. There's lots of oil in the ground in Alberta, but some of it just can't get to market. Well, if you've got all this pot in a greenhouse and you can't get it to market, that doesn't sound like a great equation. So what we noticed, though, in terms of what we follow with insiders, insider sentiment we look at the pharmaceutical industry in Canada because it's the closest proxy we have to the cannabis area. It's hit a valley, and what we mean by valley, basically, insider sentiment is tracked by our pharmaceutical indicator, has hit a low. It hit a low the week before rollout of legalization of about 20%, means 5 times as many stocks. The key insider selling is worth buying. Those types of lows typically coincide with peaks, not always, but generally, and that got us thinking. Well, look, a lot of the good news here is priced in. We've seen a lot of insiders taking money off the table. You can follow a lot of those companies on CanadianInsider.com. You can see companies that are selling. Yes, there's been some buying, and those have tended to been companies that have been hit with some investor selling, but mostly it's been insider selling, and that suggests to us that, look, the real big move here in marijuana stocks probably happened. Could it go higher? Sure. But based on our indicators, which are not infallible, it's saying that, look, we've seen probably some near-term resistance here across the board. Sure, there'll be a couple of stocks that always do better, but there'll also be a number of stocks we think that are going to really disappoint people. So it really is a month of caution for the whole market, but particularly in the marijuana space. It's had so much attention, so much news coverage. Now we're seeing politicians jump on the bandwagon. There was a story I saw, Brian Mulroney was apparently joining a company involved in marijuana space. So, when you start to see headlines like that, I really think you have to assume that a lot of the good news is priced in, and that maybe moving some of that money, if you've been fortunate enough to make a lot of money in the pot area, taking some of that off the table and waiting for better entry points, or looking at sectors that are relatively unloved, which I would still say is a gold group, would probably make a lot of sense at this point, at least, based off of the indicators that we follow.
We'll have more with Ted Dixon right after the break.
Hi, I'm Douglas Mason, President and CEO of Magnum Gold Corp, MGI and the TSX Venture Exchange. A 2015 drill program on the LH property intersected several high-grade gold intersections, including 11 meters of 20.66 grams per ton gold. Additional drill targets on the LH property have been identified by a 2018 drone airborne magnetic survey to further evaluate a pyrrhotite-enriched gold-bearing system. Please visit our website at magnumgoldcorp.com.
Don't miss out. Stay informed. Receive the HowStreet.com weekly recap with thought-provoking podcasts, radio, and articles delivered to your inbox. Sign up for the HowStreet.com weekly recap on our homepage at HowStreet.com.
Welcome back. We're speaking with Ted Dixon. Ted, is anything happening with cyber or cryptocurrencies?
We have not seen any of that come across our screens in a long time. So, it's a really good question. I was just thinking about that the other day, Jim. Are we now in this sort of prolonged, I mean 1 or 2 year consolidation period where, out of sort of the dust of the correction we saw earlier in the year, 1 or 2 winners may emerge. When you think back to the internet bubble, everyone was talking about these internet stocks up until, March 2000, and then it was everyone bailed, and really, we had the unfortunate 9/11 incident not so long after, and everyone kind of forgot about them. But then then came Google, and and Amazon continued to build its business, and here we are, a number of years later, and a number of decades later almost, and you've got some big winners, but most of those stocks are gone. And I think, probably the same thing is happening in the cryptocurrency space. So there probably are a couple of winners that are in the making. Jim, I can't help but think we're going to have a similar type situation, but not identical in the marijuana space, but similar, where you are going to have some big winners. But I think you're going to have to go through a consolidation period here after the big run. And whether, we've seen the top or not, it's anybody's guess. But sure, we'll have a couple of big winners. The question is, what multiples will investors end up wanting to pay for them? And, who are they? And those are 2 very big questions to get right. And, so investors who are active in the marijuana space and looking at it as a growth opportunity, I think those are 2 really important questions to keep in mind in the next few months here.
Aurora Cannabis received permission to list on the U.S. Stock Exchange, and they'll be up on the big board shortly. Is that a sign that the marijuana industry has some kind of legitimacy now behind it?
Well, I think it's a sign that the company's management is astute to know where the capital market money is. So, I think that it's for a company that's I'm sure trying to establish itself as a long-term winner, that we talked about, that's part of their strategy. So, it would be I think more of a company specific move in terms of that decision. I wouldn't read too much into it, because when it comes to legitimacy in the United States, that is a major political issue. Maybe we'll get some more visibility on that after the midterm elections. I doubt it. I don't think you're really going to have any visibility on that until you see who the Democrats put up as their challenger to Donald Trump, and where that Democrat stands on marijuana legalization. If they have a conservative type Democrat who comes out and isn't so fussed about, or not so fussed, but is so much in favor of decriminalizing marijuana, then that's going to even delay things more. But, if they got a Bernie Sanders or someone more progressive, then, that could provide some hope for that thesis that, marijuana is becoming more and more accepted. But the big market is the United States, and it still has a number of obstacles there to overcome before I think you can start doing discounted cash flow projections on any company gaining significant market share in the United States.
Ted, anything else bouncing around that you'd like to talk about?
Jim, we mentioned earlier in the month that this was a month of caution. It really is for investors. It started out the first few days of October was a good one for the Canadian market, but then here came the interest rate moves, which put a damper on it. Let's hope that October ends on a better note for the Canadian market, but hope is not an investment strategy. We have to really see how the market reacts to these rising interest rates. These rising interest rates, Jim, are a huge game changer. And I want to tell you that in both the U.S. and Canadian market reports that we've put out this week, we've been disappointed on the amount of insider buying that we've seen in this pullback, both in Canada and the United States, okay? And we would have expected to see a bigger tick up. So what does that tell us? It tells us that risks are rising. In Canada, we still have good levels of insider activity. The Canadian market is a contrarian paradise. That's the good news. The bad news is contrarians can often have to wait years for their bets to pay off. In the U.S., the situation is even more concerning in that the U.S. market has now had a fairly noticeable move to the downside, but no noticeable. In fact, insider sentiment has dropped a little bit. And that is not normal. That suggests to us that there may be more to come here in terms of downside moves in the next week or two ahead. So, stay tuned to our broadcast here with you. We'll update that, and certainly we'll be keeping our subscribers in Canadian Insider and Inc. Research updated in terms of what our indicators are saying with respect to recent market volatility.
Ted, thank you so much for being on the show.
Jim, thanks for having me back.
My guest has been Ted Dixon, CEO and co-founder of IncResearch.ca, his website, CanadianInsider.com. You're listening to HoweStreet.com radio. Find us on Twitter at HoweStreet, our YouTube channel, Talk Digital Network. Questions for our guests can be sent to info@HoweStreet.com. I'm Jim Goddard. Thanks for listening.
Comments made on HoweStreet.com radio are an expression of opinion only and should not be construed in any matter whatsoever as recommendations to buy or sell any financial instrument at any time. Available online at TalkDigitalNetwork.com. HoweStreet.com radio is a production of HoweStreet Media Incorporated.